and actually then put back into the farming around it. So you create a circular operation which will absorb and dissipate into the soil for plant to take up the nutrients of phosphates and nitrates. And so the fundamentals are like that have got to happen. Now, I was looking at the program for World Week, and I'm a little bit surprised that the program doesn't actually boil down to simple fundamentals like this issue of memory. It talks about various advantages to communities for having water, and how we can make and create more water and conserve water. All these things are wonderful to do, but we can conserve all the water, but if we've put a bad memory into that water while we're conserving it, we're actually just holding that toxic situation and putting it into wherever, and it continues somewhere else. So minimizing. To me, that is what's got to start being looked at. And that message is very straightforward to put across to the most rural community. From there upwards, can be put across. The fact that we can just go to a tap and turn the tap open and wash away everything and say, oh, well, the sewage works are going to handle it. Well, that's starting to become a major problem. And sewage works, which are very efficient, are themselves struggling now to be able to handle these high levels. And certainly there's technology coming out to help to do that. But it would be necessary, I think, to have a two-pronged attack where the actual originator of the memory must start to think about minimizing it and keeping keeping and look and see what they are doing. Can we use a different product which is more organic rather than inorganic? Or can we use, do we have to put so much on our face? Can we perhaps not have it? Can we put it on every second day? Can we change our thinking about that whole aspect of putting these memory chips, as it were, into the water? And that has to happen, because we're running out of water. We're running out of water which is suitable for human consumption. We're not running out of water. I mean, the world's, there's so much water in the world that there's plenty there. We can take it out of the ocean and desalinate it and all the rest of it. But certainly, in terms of fresh water, natural fresh water, we are certainly running out. I do know that ozone is probably in fact, it is the best disinfectant that we know of. It cleans water like you would not believe. I mean, it's just unbelievable. We introduced ozone in the Middle East to clean grey water, and it really, if you study it on ozone, it's incredible, and it's very easy to actually work with. If it can be dangerous in a closed room if you walk in and you haven't taken the necessary precautions, but no one would ever do that. Or certainly, if you had a plant like that, you'd have a warning system that would as soon as the ozone level reached a certain point, it would switch off. But ozone dissipates very, very quickly. It stays in the water, very cold water, for maybe 10 or 15 or 20 minutes at most. It then dissipates completely into the atmosphere. But while it's doing that, it will remove as near as 99% of everything that you could possibly think of. Pesticides, all the chemicals, the whole works. And that is quite easy to use. And it's becoming now very easy to put into your home. So what is happening is, for instance, that water in the mountains that has come down with all these memory bits and pieces and is treated, is delivered through the pipeline to your house. And it is deemed as being suitable for drinking. But to do so, they've had to put in chlorine to keep it disinfected all the way to where you are, because chlorine has a long residual time in the pipework. And so therefore, from time to time, they get the mixture wrong, because there's people using a lot of water some days on a hot day, then they don't use so much. So it's quite difficult to actually fine-tune the amount of chlorine. So they tend to overdose, and sometimes if you have a shower, you'll smell the chlorine, or you boil a kettle of water and make some tea and it tastes awful because the chlorine's gone up. So we ozonate all our water now for our house, even though it has been proved to be absolutely perfect for drinking. We have to start to learn from nature and use nature to find the solutions. And we might incorrectly not have a very good yield. then we would have to go back again and rebalance. It's not going to be a one-off, to get it right the first time. But if we take England now, they finally are going to allow the use of pesticides because they were told that if you don't use it, you're going to lose your crops. Well, that's almost like putting a gun to the government's head. You're going to lose your crops, and the people are going to starve. But where's the third solution, the third option? In everything, there's always many options. Use the pesticide, or don't use the pesticide, or use only some of the pesticide in lowland. And I think it would have been appropriate for the government to say, well, okay, you say we're going to lose our crops, but let us legislate that in 1 or 2 counties they will use no pesticide. Plant ordinarily, and if there's a failure, the government will come to the party and say, look, we made a mistake. We will recompense the farmer, so that the farmer's not taking the brunt of it. And then you run that parallel, and you see, well, that county they used pesticide. This county they didn't use pesticide. Oh my goodness, they didn't lose the crop. Then you have an ability to do the measuring. And then maybe another county you say, well, allow 50% of the crop. So you balance out until you find, and you minimize and minimize and minimize. But right now, it's an all or nothing, and they get scared to hell about this. And so virtually a gun is held to the head of the decision makers. And even though there were some 200 scientific papers presented to prove that this wouldn't happen, the decision that Britain took, very, very worryingly, is to carry on and use the pesticide. If we go back to nature and you look at a simple tree and how it transpires and it draws water, transpires, and it creates a whole system of continuity. All the time we are breaking this continuity down. We are very deft as humans to break nature's continuity. And we need to go back again and look at re-establishing nature's continuity. And so if we look at the cry, well, we had to do this because we got to feed the millions or the billions, you take that at face value to start off with and say, well, fine, but then we need to also take an area and start to re-establish what was removed from there. And that is where Luke was explaining with his seeds, for instance, how that can be done. And it's going to take a gargantuan effort. You might put down 10,000 of those seeds and only get maybe 1,000 finally germinate in the first year or the second year. But if we don't do that, if we don't start to actually move, and I'm not talking about trying to turn the desert into a forest. That to me is not right. A desert is a desert because you have more loss than you have gain, period. But on the fringes of where the desert is, on the edges of that, where the desert has been allowed to increase beyond what it would have been X number of years ago, those are the fringe areas that have to be reconditioned. So we really have to take a book out of nature. I mean, a leaf is the most perfect factory. It does everything. And so if we can create more leaves, then we will start to correct the amount of water. But it's not going to be done instantly. There's no instant fix about it. And whether we believe in weather in global warming or not, the weathers are changed. It's warming. Even there's an article now given on the effect of El Nino that's going to have on the whole of southern Africa. Zimbabwe is a basket case from a food point of view. Total basket case. Zambia is similar. South Africa is going to be hit by El Nino. And this is likely to happen for the next 6 to 8 months. That is going to happen. It might last longer, even into 18 months they're worried about. Now, El Nino is not a new thing. It's happened cyclically over goodness knows how long go back. And that energy that El Nino has, where the water temperature in the ocean is maybe a half a degree higher than it would normally be, but is spread over such an enormous area, represents so much energy that we can't even begin to calculate how much of an engine that is in driving the weather. I spoke to someone a couple of years ago about El Nino. I figured out that it was actually very shallow. I thought it was only maybe a meter of water, maybe deeper, 1.5 meters. And he said to me, no, the water can be 30 or 40 meters deep, and it can stretch from here all the way to Australia. So you imagine a stretch of water, the size of one of the oceans, that suddenly has its temperature changed by half a degree, and you had to say, well, let's generate the electricity and warm that ocean up. It's an amount of energy that we can't even begin to comprehend. And when that energy is released, as it is on our weather patterns, that's going to happen. So the natural effects of warming have been around for a long, long time. The corals show us that. There's plenty of evidence of that. So tackling global warming and so on and so forth, I think, has to be done in a number of facets. We know that the carbon dioxide is the major issue, and that has to be reduced dramatically. But right away, I would believe that I would start a whole process of planting, slowly but surely, in the rural areas, and reclaiming. Even if you had to reclaim a half a kilometer of that desert advance in 1 year, that would be an enormous gain. And over a period of years, the effects would start to happen. And there would be a change. The cooling would happen. The trees would create a cooling. There would be transpiration. So you would slowly engineer a change in what's happening there. And unfortunately, it would appear that we seem to go more and more into farming intensively as opposed to farming extensively. Now, all our monoculture, no matter where you look at it, is all farming intensively. We think, well, we've got this little area, and we're going to intensify it, and we're going to really, really optimize what we can do on that bit of land. So what will happen is that we have to start changing our farming methods to start looking at farming extensively. In other words, intensively, we only focus on our little piece of land. We don't really look beyond the edge of our little spot at what's happening. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hill, on the other side of the valley, or 2 valleys away and 2 hills away, it's a nightmare. Now let me go back again, and many years ago I was doing the farming community in the vineyards, and I got a call from a very well-known farm. They had decided to put up a piggery and use the water that they used to wash out the stalls for nutrient for their vineyards. And I think they had 400 pigs, and it was beautifully laid out. I mean, that you could possibly imagine. There's no way you could actually even explain that in a class as poignantly as that. It was there, and the farmers looked at it. They couldn't believe that this was so blatantly obvious. And how simple is it for you to take a sample of your soil and test it for pH? Not a big deal. So that started a lot of things rolling. And I remember Boelan Coetzee at that time at the farm Kanonkop, and he was advised to put about 5 tons of lime, agricultural lime, into the soil before he planted. He did the deep plowing. And he said no, he was going to put in 25 tons.